Coaches, trainers, and athletes, question for you. What training is most important to help you play at your optimum level? There's a lot of answers to this question. In all honesty, you could search, and social media and the internet have lots of different ways to answer this question. But what it boils down to is that athletes need to train in the way that they play. I'll get to the evidence in just a minute, but think with me for a second. You are an athlete and you play a random dynamic intermittent sport, something like basketball, soccer, hockey, tennis, something like that. You are moving in all three planes of motion throughout the entire game at random times, at random velocities. What sense does it make for you to train with isolated exercises in just one plane of motion? And the bottom line is that it makes no sense at all. And this is where, when we get back to that question of what type of training is most important, this is where the OPT, the optimal performance training model, comes into play. The thing that is so phenomenal about the OPT model is that it systematically approaches the functional training for the key aspects that an athlete has for their sport. It focuses on things like strength and flexibility and agility, speed, balance, core stability, all of those things that work together at any given time for our athletes. And I'll be honest, I feel like this type of model can be really tricky to convince the critics is important, because sometimes it's hard for people to see that something other than power or Olympic lifting can be advantageous for athletes. It feels extra. But what I know over the past 5 to 10 years is that study after study is showing that this type of functional training, the OPT type model, is so valuable for our athletes because it really prepares all aspects of their performance rather than just one or two. Some studies that I found showed that there was one study that looked at core training and running performance, and the conclusion that they came to is not only did the core become more stable, it also had a positive impact on the running performance. Additionally, there was another study done also with core stability, but it looked at core stability in relation to random intermittent dynamic sports. And what it found was that a stable and strong core was able to disperse the forces through the trunk to the extremities in order to help the athletes perform at their peak. They concluded that it was vital to the success. And lastly, there was a study done looking at balance and posture control related to ankle force production. And what the study found was that balance training, especially when it was done on an uneven surface, it increased muscle activation, helped improve synergistic coordination, agonist-antagonist timing, stabilizing function, motor unit recruitment, all of these incredibly necessary things. And so what I'll leave you with is this, is that we have to start moving away from isolated single plane exercises. We have to do better by our athletes in preparing all the motions that they need for their sport.